Over the last 1 decade, I have closely worked with activists, politicians, research groups, entrepreneurs, investors, social workers, bureaucrats, philanthropists, celebrities, folks in the media and healthcare. One of the reason I dabbled in all these roles with all these people is also to understand how they chase society's most wicked problems, how they look at all of this. And I figured that chasing this is both a science and an art. There are still people who believe making a long term sustainable change, or for that matter, achieving sustainable development goals, is something effortless and simple. Hence, you still see a lot of part time wannabe Mahatma Gandhis or Bhagat Singhs. There are people expecting revolution of sorts through spending time on Facebook only. The world of social change or making a sustainable impact at a scale requires enormous amounts of research, planning, resourcefulness, collaborations, patience. We are not just talking about making a positive difference in someone's life. We are talking about the fact that nobody in their lives have to go through these adversities and hardships that we see all around us. These are avoidable to a large extent. Having keeping aside natural calamities, there is a lot of suffering and pain in the society, and almost all of us want to do something about it. As we understand today, that these challenges are created by some of these following things at the very fundamental level: a bad legislation or a policy or an implementation of it, a non performing or an ill performing bureaucrat, judicial systems, law and order institutions, which unfortunately these days have become synonyms to corruption and red tape in India. Challenges created by crony capitalists, or what you can call a greedy businessman, paid media, intolerant religious beliefs, a gaping divide which is being driven through technology, a stale or a rotten education system, and lastly, a certain individual choice that comes from a place of absolute lack of empathy and compassion. Now, when you associate a certain set of people or professions chasing these problems, you generally tend to see these following professions or kind of approaches. And individuals from different walks of life who represent a civil society group, NGOs or voluntary organizations, social enterprises, corporate social responsibility units, philanthropists, or family foundations. However, there are a certain limitations while you play any of these roles yourself. For example, a civil society is challenged with resources, time, and long term commitment of the members. NGOs are challenged with their own survival and scope to adapt very fast. Social enterprises are challenged to maintain a good balance between making money and making impact. Corporate social responsibility units are challenged to focus on delivering what their business owners and shareholders want and integrating it with their social work, and also making sure it is aligned with their business. Philanthropists are challenged with a lack of time, and they do worry a lot whether they're being taken for a ride or not. All these issues makes one work from the place of scarcity of thought, resources, and time. Even a very high potential role, such as that in sectors like media or bureaucracy, are scared to do the right things or do out of the way things because of workplace punishments, such as transfers, suspensions, and even being jailed these days. So, how does one aim to make a sustained chase behind the change that promises to bring large scale positive and progressive difference in the society? The issue seems to be twofolds: our approach and our attitude. An approach that is linear and an attitude that is buried in the sense of fear or scarcity. Let's talk about the approaches. All of us, as an example, all of us jump into actions without checking for collaborations. It's very natural, but it is also very easy to correct collaborations that drive exponential impact, but unfortunately are very underrated. The thinking that we could solve problems one after another in a linear fashion itself is not really the best approach. We're challenged with multiple issues at the same time. Take right now, for example, we are dealing with the second wave of COVID 19, absolute collapse of the already non existent healthcare infrastructure, and a failed public leadership. We need approaches that promise systemic changes. We need individuals who understand systems change theories to drive initiatives. Sometimes the best thing you can do is being a small cog in a large wheel rather than taking up something heroic, very difficult to practice. Take the example of Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, or some of you, as you would call it, Manrega. The designers of this scheme tackled the issues of agrarian crisis, unemployment, lack of basic infrastructure like watersheds, poor health, low purchase power among rural India. All of this achieved only through one scheme. Consultants, politicians, bureaucrats, and many social workers continue to work together in ensuring the implementation of such a scheme. Now, to talk about the last part, that is the attitude of a change maker. As you remember, every profession that we discussed before, like an NGO worker or an institutional representative like bureaucrats, had some sort of a limitation or a challenge. But most importantly, underlying all these challenges that are visible, there is a deeper question of working from scarcity. Now, this is what I want to really stress upon. When one approaches a solution from the place of inadequacy, there is a struggle to be result oriented. You end up doing what you can do, but rarely what really needs to be done. Because you're mostly trying to prove being an achiever of that role or that profession rather than achieving impact. The internal struggle of wanting to be somebody in that role stems from the need of self validation as well. It's very natural, especially in today's world. But this self validation also forms the bedrock of the fear of losing or fear of thinking out of the box, or doing whatever it takes to solve these nasty social problems. On the contrary, someone who can overcome such need for self validation ceases to be caught between the process and goes on to solve the problems. But in that process, he actually becomes a nobody that this large system of social change will not recognize. But this nobody is the fearless leader that we need in every profession that has the power to make a difference. So, in summary, other than all the operational or the usual steps of identifying a problem and working towards building a solution, here is my proposal to execute the art of solving society's most wicked problems. Step 1: understand the whole system where the social problem becomes alive. Remember, there could be more than one issue, more than one solution. And also remember that we may need to be prepared to solving or addressing all of them at once instead of a silo approach. Map out all the interdependencies and the role which is most relevant and impactful through you. Consider the fearless approaches that we discussed. And last step, go for it. Thank you.